everyone for staying with The Real Issues on this Monday, the 12th of September 2022, the start of another week with me, Shelton Daniel, your host and producer, Nigel Shimari Nicholas, doing the technical honors. And we have guests in the studio with us. We're here to talk about the ozone layer and World Ozone Day. Now, I don't even know if they're going to talk about the layer because, there was a time it seemed we had an obsession with the ozone layer. Every conversation was about it. Every time you took out your bottle of Gillette Right Guard or whatever, you were reminded about the impact, that the aerosol sprays and the fluorocarbons and so on were having on the ozone layer that is over the earth that was supposed to block out harmful rays of sunlight, and we're reminded of refrigeration and the chemicals that we use as refrigerants that they were ozone depleting and ozone damaging. And then I did notice that the ozone conversation that occupied so much of our attention appears to have faded away, and now I'm hearing that it's because we've had some success in it. Do we only talk about things when they are threats, but we don't talk about them? Well, maybe not so. But I have with me two ladies from the Department of Sustainable Development of the Government of St. Lucia, in the persons of the Information Assistant, Ms. Jessie Leos. I'm pleased and proud to say a fellow, media worker. That's how my first awareness of her came. Good afternoon to you, Jessie. She's the Information Assistant. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us here.
All right. And along with Jessie, we have Keisha. Am I pronouncing it right? Keisha Jambatis. She is the Sustainable Development and Environment Officer in the same Department of Sustainable Development. Jessie, we're here to talk about World Ozone Day, I think right. 2022. And I understand there's been something appended to it now, that there has been a measure of success in it, that it's moving into a broader picture that is occupying the world for some time now. So you tell us all about it.
Absolutely, Shelton. Well, as you indicated, when things started off, it was very serious, a call to action, a clarion call, a grave call to action on the part of world leaders. But we have slowly but steadily, after 35 years of the Montreal Protocol, come to a point where we are celebrating what has now been touted as the most successful environmental treaty to date globally. We saw after the Vienna Convention in 1985, that was after the 70s, that's the time of peace, love, and as you indicated, the ozone hole. That issue was brought to the fore by scientists, and through the Vienna Convention, it was decided that something needed to be done in 1985. And then 2 years later, it took them 2 years to do their homework. They came back with documentation, a plan forward, that was the Montreal Protocol. And since then, we've had countries ratifying, St. Lucia included, and St. Lucia began the work. I'm going to have Keisha speak a little bit about our national experience, what we've been able to achieve so far. But since the mobilization of the 80s and the 90s, we have so far seen a recuperation of the ozone layer. It is closing, and the Montreal Protocol World Ozone Day has now become a celebration. It's a jubilation, and to the point where the Montreal Protocol is being used to address other global issues.
All right. Okay. Well, Keisha, Jessie did indicate that you would weigh in on this subject. Will the ozone layer ever completely close, the hole that was in it, or is it that it's at an acceptable level now? And if we also, I understand that, we are now looking at the broader climate change aspect now that's affecting us. So your take on it, whatever it is that is, it's too scientific for me, depending on you. Yes.
Okay, so as Jessie mentioned, the ozone layer is on the path to recovery, and we expect that the whole will be back to pre-industrial levels towards the end of this century. We have been as a party to the Montreal Protocol, St. Lucia has been working together with all the countries who signed this agreement. As Jessie mentioned, it's one of the most successful environmental treaties, and that is because under the Montreal Protocol, all 197 countries of the world signed this agreement and have been working together to control or to manage these ozone depleting substances. And St. Lucia signed onto this protocol in 1993, and we have been implementing projects and programs to control or regulate these ozone depleting substances in St. Lucia.
Remind us what were some of these ozone depleting substances that we had to regulate. I did allude in passing, when that was just off my memory, about refrigeration chemicals, the freons and whatever it was that the refrigeration people used and so on. Were there others that we we can maybe talk about, so that people, if they still have any reserves or residues of them lying around, that they will know, don't go doing anything that can, contribute to the restart of a problem that we've done so much to overcome,
Okay, Shelton, you would be surprised as to where we have been using ozone depleting substances in the past. Ozone depleting substances, for example, a popular one, chlorofluorocarbons, what we call CFCs, and you referred to it as Freon. It has been used in our refrigerators, air conditioners, in aerosol sprays, and also even in insulating foams, and sometimes the soles of your shoes may have contained ozone depleting substances. The CFCs that I spoke of, we as part of the Montreal Protocol, we phased those out in 2008. St. Lucia worked to phase those out in 2008. But during the CFC phase out, you have to replace those refrigerants with something new, and the HCFCs, or hydrochlorofluorocarbons, were introduced. And these HCFCs, of course, they've been used in similar applications for refrigeration and air conditioning equipment, and also other ODS like halons were used in firefighting, and that's the main ones that we're phasing out right now.
Okay, all right. And I would gather that we have done a good job in playing our part, because it is said that we are often such a minuscule of the whole global problem, but nevertheless we want to take our place and show that we are taking it seriously and that we are considering. So tell us about the actual World Ozone Day, which is coming up on the 16th. We're talking about just 4 more days, so towards the end of this week, Friday, we are going to have World Ozone Day. How is that going to be marked in St. Lucia, to remind us of where we have been in this struggle, our contribution to this fight, and now I suppose the expanded way in which we are taking it now?
Okay. Well, our World Ozone Day activities started from the summer. The Department of Sustainable Development did run a sustainable summer campaign, so to speak, where all of our activities from the Southeast Coast Project and so on, the National Ozone Unit was in on a movie and games day. It was to promote an immersive mobile game that the United Nations Environment Program did launch to get millennials, Gen Z, into the idea of understanding what the ozone layer is, its significance. So we did have that activity over the summer for the kids, and this week we are really doing essentially a press run to spread the word about where St. Lucia is at, really, as it pertains to the our status as per the Montreal Protocol, what we are planning to do, and Keisha will speak a little bit about an upcoming launch that we have under the National Ozone Unit, and we will be having a special, I dare to call it an extravaganza, live on NTN this coming Friday, when we want to get as many persons tuning in as possible to speak about the ozone layer, all of the activities that have been happening from the time St. Lucia ratified in 1993 to now, what we've been able to achieve. She indicated 2008 we were able to phase out CFCs. The work now is to phasing out HCFCs, and we have a mission up until 2030 to do so. There's also an effort, the Montreal Protocol has evolved to address a situation, global warming right now. So successful was it at dealing with the ozone layer that now they are trying to use it to address global warming, because these CFCs, HCFCs, and now HFCs, which are more commonly used now, they are being used, but they are a threat to our atmosphere. They are heating to our atmosphere. So that all of this information we want to convey to the general public, and most importantly, we want to get the public in on, these terms, Shelton, can seem so abstracted to the common St. Lucian. What does this have to do with me? Our footprint when it comes to carbon is so minimal, but our work as a collaborator toward the Montreal Protocol has to be very, very strong, because ultimately we are, just like climate change and so on, we are the ones who are impacted significantly. So we wanted to bring everyone in on the ideas of what they can do, small changes, attitudinal changes that they could take on to be able to contribute meaningfully toward not only the ozone layer recovery, which is still ongoing, but also the global warming efforts that is underway, reversal effort.
Wonderful, and I think that's a point that bears reinforcement that while, as you say, our carbon footprint is minimal, but we have to demonstrate our own seriousness and commitment. We can't keep going to the climate change, summits and so on, and make the case, that our vulnerabilities have to be taken into account, and accommodations and concessions made to us for that, unless we ourselves show that we are serious and committed and playing our part. So I think that's a very good point.
Absolutely.
Keisha, you want to talk to us about the upcoming launch that Jesse alluded to?
Okay, so Jesse alluded to our HPMP, our HCFC Phase Out Management Plan Stage 2 launch, which we are planning to host in the end of September. What the HPMP is, it's our strategy, our overall strategy that outlines how we are going about phasing out these HCFCs. This is the ozone depleting substances that we are currently phasing out right now. And as she mentioned, our target date for HCFC phase out is 2030. So stage 2 of the HCFC phase out management plan will take us from 2020 to 2030, and it will help us to phase out completely HCFCs in St. Lucia. It outlines the
HCFC is a
hydrochlorofluorocarbons. So that's why we have all of these acronyms HCFCs.
Okay.
And
hashtag HCFC by 2030.
Okay.
HCFC free by 2030. That's our target.
Alright, okay. Yeah.
And so how are we going about phasing out these HCFCs? So there are several interventions in the HPMP. We are working on demand reduction, and that is training our technicians, our refrigeration and air conditioning technicians in good refrigeration management practices, ensuring, and that way they would be able to gain the skills necessary. And how do you reduce your consumption? By reusing, clean up your refrigerants and reusing what you already have, so you're not importing new refrigerants into St. Lucia. It's also encourages them to use good practices when servicing air conditioning equipment, that they are not venting refrigerants out in the atmosphere, and which is contributing to the problem that we have, the whole ozone problem. Under that HPMP, we also have our Montreal Protocol legislation and regulations, and one aspect of the regulations is a licensing and quota system for refrigerants. That means not anybody can import refrigerants in St. Lucia. You have to be licensed, you have to be registered.
But doesn't that already obtain? Are you saying that this is not the case right now?
That is the case right now, but it's enforcement all throughout the HPMP. We're training customs officers who are our first line of defense when these things come to our country, so they are aware of the refrigerants that are not supposed to enter our country, and then they are able to monitor and control at the borders.
All right.
We are also engaging on the HPMP in further education and awareness activities like today, and what we do in schools to teach people and to raise awareness about ozone layer depletion and what we are doing through the Montreal Protocol and our HPMP.
Wow, this sounds very interesting, and I think the whole matter of the ozone layer was another example of how humanity can respond in ways that when faced with a threat, because I think there was the development of a new generation of chemicals that serve the purpose without threatening the ozone layer. So it isn't a case of we'll have to do away with refrigeration and air conditioning, but that the chemicals that we use in it and so on to achieve that effect, that they don't have to be depleting to the ozone layer. Jesse, in what way do you think that St. Lucia can punch the air and celebrate and say, hey, we did it on this one? And does it give cause for hope that in the broader issue of climate change and global warming that we are now facing, that this victory, if we can call it that, where the ozone layer is concerned, that we will be able to advance towards, achieving some of the objectives that are proven to be quite contentious, quite difficult. There's been a lot of wobbling and, and so on when it comes to climate change. You, as someone who's been in the media, I'm sure because of your exposure and your reading, do you see a trend that this will give us a little more confidence and, better prospects in terms of climate change?
Absolutely. I mean, these things, these achievements, so that is why we're trying to promote what we are doing. A lot of these things are not this information is not common to the regular person, you know. So the more we can let persons know about what is being achieved, we can give them an indication of what is so much more possible for small island developing states. We have our disadvantages, but we also have advantages in our human resource. And I think if we, not aggressively, but if we remain steadfast in our representation, actually this week in preparation for the conference of parties for biodiversity, we have a regional grouping coming into St. Lucia for training in preparation for that COP15. So if we equip our negotiators, if we equip our officials, our ministers with the information that they require, they can responsibly and they can, you know, affirmatively represent St. Lucia and other small island developing states, and, you know, banking off of the successes that we have seen, the achievements that we've had, as like the Montreal Protocol, and as well as other conventions that we have acceded to. So it is really working with the strengths that we have already had, but remaining consistent, remaining informed, and being able to negotiate passionately, earnestly at regional fora and international fora.
I couldn't have said it better. Let me just read the press release that attends to what informs our interaction today. It says the ozone layer is on the mend, and the Department of Sustainable Development wants to share this wonderful news with St. Lucia's residents. World Ozone Day, or the International Day for the Preservation of the Ozone Layer, has been observed annually since 1994 on the 16th of September, commemorating the 1987 signing of the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. 35 years later, this treaty, created to halt and reverse ozone depletion, has become the most successful global environmental pact. Production and consumption of ozone-depleting substances / chemicals are being successfully phased down and phased out. The work is hardly over, however, as the Montreal Protocol has evolved to focus on addressing another environmental crisis, global warming, through its Kigali Amendment. As we inch closer to World Ozone Day next week, we want to spread the word on St. Lucia's achievements and ongoing effort as per the Montreal Protocol, what it means to the average citizen, and what actions they can take to help address these environmental concerns.
That was not our press release. It was a special write-up for you.
All right, wonderful.
But we just wanted to keep you abreast ahead of coming here. But as you indicated, the Kigali Amendment, St. Lucia did ratify that as well, and it speaks to, as I indicated earlier, addressing global warming and climate action overall. So we are looking forward to our initiatives going forward in that respect.
All right, I as an individual, how can I'm not a refrigeration or air conditioning technician or expert, but how can I as an individual contribute towards this effort, towards this continued battle against ozone depleting substances? Do I need to familiarize myself with information, so if a technician comes to my home to service my refrigerator, that I can look at the tank that it comes and says, hey, you ain't using that on my fridge in my house and so on? Do you think it can get to that level of awareness?
Certainly, Keisha.
Certainly. So as part of our program to train technicians, after they've completed the training, they are certified by the Department of Sustainable Development, the National Ozone Unit. So anytime you're doing servicing or repairs on your air conditioning unit, you must ensure that you use one of those certified technicians. They have ID cards that show that they have undergone the good refrigeration training at the department, and so that you can feel confident that you're getting a technician that will engage in good practices when servicing your units. What you can do as a consumer when you're looking to purchase new equipment, I mean these days it's getting very hot and people might be considering getting air conditioners.
Right.
So you ensure that you look at the labels. You will see labels that say HCFC free or ozone friendly. So you look out for these labels. We also recommend that you also look at the energy efficiency labels, because you want to save money as well on your electricity bills. So that's one of the ways that you as a consumer can get involved in helping to phase out ozone depleting substances.
All right, and from the very moment, if you are an importer, be sure that what you're importing, that it is compliant as
yes,
well.
it is compliant. You have to be sure, and as an importer,
otherwise customs can refuse
entry. Yes.
So you might end up losing your money if you go importing things.
Yes, and we have some heavy fines if you if you don't follow the
all right,
the
okay
rules.
Okay, well, Thank you so very much, Keisha and Jesse, for coming and for sharing this information. I mean, I thought it was going to be dry bones technical stuff, but I have to say I found it rather engaging to me as well. Ozone is something which, if just for general knowledge of those who are listening, it's not the ozone that is the problem, it is the ozone depleting substances, and the ozone we're talking about is very high up, you know, in the sky, in the atmosphere, in a layer surrounding the earth, that it has properties that prevent certain harmful rays from the sun. I think they call the ultraviolet rays, which are been shown to contribute or cause skin cancer and things like that. And you know, it serves as a natural filter against the ultraviolet light.
But it was sunscreen.
That's right. But it was found to be breaking down over at least a part of the earth, the poles, I think the North Pole and so on, and potentially allowing more dangerous rays from the sunlight to get through. And one big contributor was because of the chemicals that were being emitted from the earth in too great a quantity over a small space of time. I mean, we're talking about the rate of emission and so on. Well, they brought that down under control. By the way, ozone is oxygen, but it's oxygen not of a type that you can breathe. If you breathe it, it's poisonous, I believe, to you. The normal oxygen that you breathe is like two marbles stuck together. In ozone, it's three marbles, you know. They call them molecules stuck together. But ozone has some very great uses. It's my understanding that industrially it's a very powerful cleaner, that they dissolve ozone in water. I saw a documentary once where they were picking oranges, and you know, they wanted to wash and clean those oranges before packing them so they look presentable on the shelves, and they just run it through an ozone bath, you know, ozone dissolved in water, and you should have seen, without any scrubbing or rubbing, those oranges came out looking so clean and fresh and nice. And you know what it is said too? That when the ozone does its work, if there's anything that gives a bad smell to that kind of produce, it causes it to come off and to have a good smell, like it naturally perfumes them. So ozone is something, while we don't want to breathe it, we don't want to get poisoned, but it is something that we want to preserve, especially in the upper atmosphere where it does its wonderful work. And our Department of Sustainable Development is very committed to that, and we should give them every support possible, joining in with the observance of World Ozone Day this coming Friday, the 16th of September. Any parting words from you ladies before we wrap up this segment? It's up to you.
We just want to remind persons about the effects of our activities on our environment and what they can do to help, how we can work together to solve environment challenges. We'll look out for our live special on NTN to commemorate the ozone layer celebrations on Friday 16th September. From Jesse, I can't recall the exact time.
We will be going live from 10 p.m. Yes.
All right, well, Jesse Leos, Information Assistant, and Keisha Jabatis, Sustainable Development and Environment Officer, both from the Department of Sustainable Development. I want to thank you two for being here with us on the real issues and sharing this vital and very important information. Anything that has to do with the environment, folks, we have to take it seriously. We are a small island, we are open, we are very vulnerable, we don't have the depth of size and so on to give us resilience to take hits against the risk and so on. Worse, when we exacerbate them by our own actions, they also rob us of the legitimacy to stand up and to speak as boldly as we have been doing in the international fora, so that there is a global mitigation of those risks which especially threaten us because of our vulnerabilities. This is The Real Issues. We take a break. We'll be right back.